Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Today we're going to talk about a number of headlines, both directly and indirectly related to Bible prophecy. So let's dive right in. This first one is from Yahoo Finance. It's titled World's Most Crucial Fuel Heads for Shortage Touching Everything. And they're talking about diesel here. It says no fuel is more essential to the global economy than diesel. It powers trucks, buses, ships, and trains. It drives machinery for construction, manufacturing, and farming. It's burned for heating homes. And with the high price of natural gas, in some places it's also being used to generate power. Within the next few months, almost every region on the planet will face the danger of a diesel shortage at a time when supply crunches in nearly all the world's energy markets have worsened inflation and stifled growth. The toll could be enormous, feeding through into everything from the price of a turkey to consumer bills for heating homes this winter. In the U.S. alone, the surging diesel cost will mean a $100 billion hit to the economy, according to Mark Finley, an energy fellow at Rice University's Baker Institute of Public Policy. Anything and everything that gets moved in our economy, diesel is there, Finley said. Moving stuff around is one thing. People potentially freezing to death is another. In the U.S., stockpiles of diesel and heating oil are at their lowest point ever for this time of year, and data going back 4 decades. Northwest Europe is also facing a low buffer. Inventories are forecast to hit a low this month, and then tumble even more by March, shortly after sanctions come into play that will cut the region off from Russian seaborne supplies. Global export markets have gotten so tight that poorer countries like Pakistan are getting shut out, with suppliers failing to book enough cargoes to meet the nation's domestic needs. I want you to think about that. So here we're talking about Pakistan being shut out from diesel supplies because of this tightening market, this heightened demand. The countries with more wealth are able to bid up those supplies on the open market, which means they then become unaffordable to countries like Pakistan. Now they can't get it. We talked about this not long ago. Pakistan faced this just a few weeks ago with natural gas, and they announced that natural gas would only be on 3 times a day for cooking. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a couple hours each time. The rest of the time, no natural gas because the price got bid up so much by Europe going out and seeking replacements for the Russian supplies they lost. So this diesel shortage, it's hitting every aspect of the economy globally, and it's particularly going to hit the poorest nations the hardest. So it hits the poor in every country as they struggle with inflation of just about everything, but it's really going to hit the poorest nations like Pakistan. And so here we read in the Norman transcript, it's hitting farmers in Oklahoma. It says Oklahoma farmers now facing diesel shortage. As if this year hasn't been enough on the agriculture community, Oklahoma farmers can now add global diesel shortage to their hardship bingo card this year. Just weeks after an executive order was placed by Governor Stitt to continue drought relief efforts for farmers, reports of what some are calling a devastating diesel shortage are rolling in to accompany farmers into the already harsh winter season. Tim Heinrich, who serves on the board of directors for the Garfield County Conservation District and runs a 3,000-acre farm operation of his own in north central Oklahoma, says a modern-day combine, like the one he currently uses on his farm for harvest, will typically require about 150 gallons of diesel a day to get the job done. A job that in the end will cost him more in fuel than he'll get back in sales. Think about that. It will cost more in fuel alone than what he's going to get back in sales. Guys, what can't be farmed profitably won't. Meaning, if the farmers can't make a profit, then they'll either go bankrupt by farming or they will stop farming. Either way, you end up with less food produced, less food production. And we've talked about over the past year We're already in a tight market, and what have we seen with these tight markets like diesel and natural gas? These poorer countries get squeezed out. The poorest in every nation get hit by massive inflation. So we're going to see this food inflation continue for the foreseeable future until the market corrects these types of discrepancies. If it's not profitable to farm, they won't farm. That means less food. Now, that may mean 1% less food or 2%. It doesn't mean food will disappear, but on the margin is where the prices are set. And so if you have a 1, 2, 5% drop in production of diesel, natural gas, oil, food, then you're going to see a corresponding rise in prices. Often that's a lot more than 1, 2, or 5%. You're going to see those prices go up, and you're going to see nations like Pakistan shut out. And this is why we've been warning about famine coming in the year ahead. And it's already here in some countries, unfortunately. This goes on. It says, "I'm harvesting soybeans that aren't even worth harvesting right now," he said. Adding an increase in diesel cost makes every component of every function of his farm more expensive. Most of us have diesel pickups that we use to feed cows with all winter long. All the trucks hauling the crops to and from the farm, all of our farm sprayers, our combines and our tractors, all of it is at the mercy of the rising cost of diesel. And we've talked about this pretty much all year. The number one cost for farmers for agricultural production is diesel. Number two is fertilizer. We've seen both of those. The prices of both of those things skyrocket over the past 12 to 18 months, and that has a huge impact on the ability of farmers to profitably operate. And what did we just say? What can't be farmed profitably won't. So this is going to have a huge impact for food availability and food prices in the months and possibly years ahead. This goes on. This is from the AP News. It says, bird flu prompts slaughter of 1.8 million chickens in Nebraska. Nebraska agriculture officials say another 1.8 million chickens must be killed after bird flu was found on a farm, in the latest sign that the outbreak that has already prompted the slaughter of more than 50 million birds nationwide continues to spread. And this isn't just the United States, this is globally. I mean, this 50 million they're talking about is the United States, but this is a problem on a global scale. It says the Nebraska Department of Agriculture said Saturday that the state's 13th case of bird flu was found on an egg-laying farm in northeast Nebraska's Dixon County, about 120 miles north of Omaha. Just like on other farms where bird flu has been found this year, all the chickens on the Nebraska farm will be killed to limit the spread of the disease. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says that more than 52.3 million birds in 46 states, mostly chickens and turkeys on commercial farms, have been slaughtered as part of this year's outbreak. Again, this represents, I've seen in some stories, 1.3% of chicken production or turkey production, whatever, whether you're looking at egg production or chickens to be eaten and consumed as food. That doesn't mean that these won't be available in a supermarket somewhere. But what it means is that the prices are set at the margin. And so if you have less than you anticipated, then you're going to have higher prices. And at the margins, this is going to squeeze those lower on the socioeconomic scale, both in individual nations and among the nations themselves. So the poorest nations are going to get less food, basically, is what that means. So again, we're heading toward famine, and it doesn't get better because we read in the Telegraph that the Netherlands is to close up to 3,000 farms in order to comply with European Union rules. The Dutch government plans to buy and close down up to 3,000 farms near environmentally sensitive areas to comply with EU nature preservation rules. The Netherlands is attempting to cut down its nitrogen pollution and will push ahead with compulsory purchases if not enough farms take up the offer voluntarily. Notice that If you don't volunteer, well, then we'll make it compulsory. Well, in my book, that makes it compulsory from the very beginning. It says farmers will be offered a deal, quote, well over the worth of the farm, according to the government plan that is targeting the closure of 2,000 to 3,000 farms or other major polluting businesses. Farms as polluting businesses. This is their view. I just don't see it. It says earlier leaked versions of the plan put the figure at 120% of the farm's value, but that figure has not yet been confirmed by ministers. There is no better offer coming, Christiane Vanderwall, nitrogen minister, told MPs on Friday. She said compulsory purchases would be made with, quote, pain in the heart if necessary. So here we have this woman operating on this totalitarian instinct. We're going to make you comply whether you like it or not. You better take it because no better offer is coming. And what this is going to do, none of this makes any sense from a policy standpoint from what they're saying, but it makes a whole lot of sense if you study history and you study totalitarian regimes, especially communist regimes, and when they come into power, how they like to destroy family farms, individual farms, and centralize food supply in order to make people more dependent. Ultimately, this is about control. And if you control the food supply, you control the people. We go on. Next article, this is from Voice of America. It says Ghana to use gold to buy oil instead of US dollars to address debt distress. Ghana's finance minister said the country is at high risk of debt distress as its currency has depreciated against the US dollar, increasing its foreign debt by $6 billion this year alone. Ghana said on Thursday announced more spending cuts, including a freeze on government hiring and a hike in the value-added tax. It's also looking to buy oil using gold rather than US dollars as the West African country grapples with the worst economic crisis in a generation. We talked about this a week and a half ago in a video titled, I believe it was, Will an Economic Pearl Harbor Destroy America? And we talked about the petrodollar and the linkage between purchasing oil on the international market and that only being in dollars for the last 50 years, and how we're seeing that break down over the last 12 to 18 months. We've seen it break down. We've seen it being chipped away at, with Saudi Arabia saying they want to join BRICS, signing a defense compact with Russia. We've seen talk about oil being traded in currencies other than dollars, and now here we have Ghana saying we will trade gold for oil, bypassing the US dollar. This means less demand for US dollars going forward as more and more nations join the BRICS nations, as they move to be able to buy oil in their own currencies or in a commodity-backed currency that may yet be developed by the BRICS nations, or gold. And as we see that happen, we're going to see those dollars flood back to the United States of America and cause massive inflation. Now, this isn't going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're seeing this step by step, country by country, news story by news story, chipping away at U.S. dominance, the dollar's dominance in international oil markets. This is going to have huge repercussions. In this article we hear Robert Kiyosaki essentially saying that. He says hot inflation will wipe out 50% of the U.S. population. What he means and how to protect yourself. Now, he's not saying that 50% of the population will be dead. He's saying financially they'll be wiped out based on the inflation that's coming. So read on, it says, with price levels continuing to spike, the Fed is no longer using the word transitory to describe inflation. U.S. consumer prices jumped 7.7% in October from a year ago, still hovering near the highest levels since the early 1980s. Food and energy are still spiking at a historic pace, which could give the Fed more reason to keep raising interest rates. It's a vicious cycle criticized by many investing veterans, and Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki is one of the latest experts to sound the alarm. When inflation goes up, we're going to wipe out 50% of the U.S. population, he told Stansberry Research earlier this month. Again, he's talking about financially, not your life is gone. He says, America has stopped producing products. We produce bubbles, he says, adding that we now have bubbles in the real estate market, the stock market, and the bond market. The author also criticized President Joe Biden's decision to halt the Keystone XL oil pipeline, which he believes is a major reason energy prices are so high. It also spells trouble for those who want to enjoy their golden years. When the bubbles burst, Kiyosaki said, the stock market will crash, so those relying on their 401k plans are toast. We don't have a retirement. Our pensions are bust. So guys, what's coming? What's been happening is we've seen this flood of currency based on the government response to the lockdowns that we had over the last 3 years. We've also seen the disruptions that caused in the economy and then the supply chain, and all of that has presented itself in terms of inflation. However, we are soon going to see those bubbles that were created that he's talking about now burst, and you're going to see deflation. Now, does that mean that prices are going to go down? Not necessarily. It may mean that prices of things you don't need go down, but I expect oil and fuel and food prices to remain elevated for the reasons we talked about, because there's a supply issue. You're not going to eat less food. You may eat different types of food based on your economic circumstances, but you still need food. So the demand isn't going to go away, but demand for a new car, jewelry, things that aren't essential to life will go down in this deflationary spiral that'll come when we see these bubbles burst, and we may be in the midst of that right now. So this is from last month, but I believe it fits in with what we're saying here. It says 60/40 portfolios are facing the worst returns in 100 years, says Bank of America. Investors with classic 60/40 portfolios are facing the worst returns this year for a century, Bank of America Global Research said in a note on Friday, noting that bond markets continue to see huge outflows. So-called 60/40 portfolios typically have 60% of their holdings in stocks and the remaining 40% in fixed income. Bank of America said annualized returns so far in 2022 on portfolios like these are the worst in the past 100 years, while those in 25-25-25-25 portfolios that hold equal portions of cash, commodities, stocks, and bonds have dropped 11.9%. The worst since 2008. So think about that for a moment. These types of portfolios, and the 60/40 is probably what your typical American financial advisor recommends for people for retirement, has the worst performance in 100 years. Think back, what was 100 years ago? 1922. What hadn't even happened yet? The 1929 stock market crash, the Great Depression, all the events we've dealt with since then, and this year so far has been the worst in 100 years for that 60/40 portfolio allocation. So we're already seeing, I believe, this bust that Robert Kiyosaki is talking about, and I've warned that when that bust really kicks in, we're gonna see another Great Depression. It's coming from Europe. We see it in Europe with these astronomical energy prices that are 10, 20 times what they were just 2 years ago. There's no way you can grow an economy with energy prices going up like that. We're seeing in the United States the 60/40 portfolio, the worst in 100 years, and we're seeing articles like this one. This is from The Guardian. It says, I'm selling my blood. Millions in U.S. can't make ends meet with 2 jobs. says millions of Americans are currently working 2 or more jobs in order to make ends meet as global inflation and corporations jacking up prices. Here's some more commentary from a news person. The corporations aren't jacking up the prices. They're raising the prices in response to the government policies to print currency and to lock down businesses and to mess up the supply chain. And they're meddling in the economy, which has sent the prices of food, gas, housing, health insurance, and other necessities soaring in the past year. So this is a response to the government and the government policies, not corporations gouging people. It goes on and explains this one woman and what she's doing, how she's working multiple jobs just to survive. And she says, I'm exhausted all the time. On the one day I have off a week, I donate plasma for extra money. I'm literally selling my blood to eat because I have no choice. So this is where we are right now. And we haven't even gotten to the worst of this crisis. We haven't reached winter in Europe, which I said would be ground zero for this global depression that's coming. We have people selling their blood in the United States just to be able to eat, working multiple jobs to pay their rent, just to get by. We see in China, we see social unrest, political upheaval. Who knows what that means, but we're seeing enormous disruptions to the economic activity in China as a result. Apple, I think, has said up to 30% of their iPhone deliveries for the month of December aren't going to be delivered as a result of that. So we're seeing the largest economies in the world all at the same time facing these pressures, along with diesel shortages and rising energy costs. This is not going to end well. It's going to lead to a depression. And the last time we saw a global depression, we got Adolf Hitler and World War II. So this is probably not going to end well. I believe hyperinflation is on the other side of this, because the politicians, once this depression gets bad enough, the politicians are going to call for universal basic income, and they're going to print currency endlessly and hand it out to everybody who can vote. And when that happens, all confidence in the currency system is going to be lost. We're going to see a collapse of the global financial infrastructure. It's just, you can't have all of these things happening at once. So major changes are coming to the world financially, geopolitically. We're too far down the road for that to be avoided at this point. The only question is when. How soon will all of this take place? How soon will we see the wheels come off the bus? And so, guys, I know this sounds like bad news, and it is bad news for what we're having to deal with here in this world. But the good news is that while we were still sinners, Jesus Christ came and died on the cross and died for our sins so that we could have eternal life, and he is coming back, guys. So we live in the season of the Lord's return. Keep your eyes focused on him. Keep focused on the work that the Lord wants you to do for whatever time you have left here on earth. That's what we should be focused on. Try to put on blinders, but we need to be aware of this stuff. We're commanded to be watchful, be awake, be alert, but be prepared as we go into these times, because we don't know how much of this we will have to endure. And there's a lot coming, a lot of discomfort in the future. 2023, I believe, will be a lot worse than 2022 was. So, guys, leave your comments below. What do you think? Let me know. In the meantime, make sure to hit the like and share buttons. And God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.